Hi there, this is John from John's Record Collection. This is box number 15, The Hush of Midnight to Jim and Jean. Hey, I'm not even sure I remember what's in the beginning of this box, but let's check it out. Okay, we need to throw out some of the paper we used to pad it with. The Hush of Midnight. So, I think this is... This is an example of what they call a rock mass. So in the 60s, what happened is that a lot of worship services in churches tried to modernize their literature by liturgy. They used to modernize their liturgy by basically, instead of using the old hymns, they tried to use more upbeat rock sounds for their religious songs. And so this is an example of a Jewish one with Canterbury Edgar and the Zamir Chorale called The Hush of Midnight. So this is a Jewish synagogue service that was done rock and roll style in the late 60s. This one's good. Not a lot of people know about it. Too Much Country by the Hush Puppies. The Hush Puppies were a backup group. So sometimes country and western bands, there'd be a backup group to a more well-known named singer. So the Hush Puppies were the backup group to a more well-known country singer by the name of Ferlin Husky. And this is the backup group, the Hush Puppies. Too Much Country has a bunch of steel guitar on it, and there is a cover version of the Beatles' A Hard Day's Night that is done country and western style. And I think it has some steel guitar on it, if I recall correctly. But it's a good country record, definitely old school, not your corporate Nashville country. It's like old school and good steel guitar, and they're pretty tight. They kind of rock a bit, although they're on the countryside. They had enough good musicianship. They could have been a good rockabilly band. They just choose to play more in the country style, but they're good. So this is Hush Puppies, Too Much Country. One example of a bunch of country side men finally getting to do their own album. And so I'm from Minneapolis, and this is one of the great bands from that city, Husker Du, Candy Apple Gray. That's one of their records from after they went on to Warner Brothers. But here's one of their records from when they were still on the independent label SST, Husker Du, New Day Rising. Very nice. Unfortunately, I don't have Zen Arcade. I would love to have an original copy of Husker Du's Zen Arcade. This is Laura Huxley's You Are Not the Target, Recipes for Living and Loving. So this is so Laura Huxley was the wife of the author Aldous Huxley, known for Brave New World. And Aldous Huxley was also known for experimenting with mescaline and LSD and a lot of hallucinogenic drugs towards the end of his life. And he was into a lot of Eastern spirituality, and Laura Huxley was coming from that same place. So this record was actually used like around 1961, 1962 to help guide people through acid trips. They just don't say it in the liner notes, but that's what it was used for. So it's a very interesting kind of proto-new agey spoken word record that is basically designed to help people relax and go through these sort of mental journeys that help them, travel through their inner space and whatnot. And Hybrid Kids. I think this is a record that was done by a guy who was in Mott the Hoople. I'm going to have to look that up, but it was a guy who was in a more conventional rock band, and then when 1970s new wave hit, he got a lot weird And then the Hi-Fi's Near Eastern Orchestra. So this is so a high, H-Y-E, is kind of a term that Armenians use to describe themselves. So this is kind of an Armenian, Middle Eastern flavored record. And the David Hikes and the Harmonic Choir, Harmonic Meetings. So this is kind of a very drony record. Hikes, Hykes, or anything that's under the Harmonic Choir. It's some very drony stuff from I think the early '80s, like kind of new agey, but way more intense and drony. This here is Dick Hyman. Dick Hyman is really cool. He was a jazz musician, but he did many really cool records on the Moog synthesizer. Age of Electronicus is one of those records, probably his best record, in fact. This one has some funkier stuff he did, like he does a version of "Give It Up or Turn It Loose," the James Brown song. I think he does a version of "Time Is Tight," the Booker T and the MGs. So a lot of really interesting, really some of the best examples of late 1960s funk and R&B that this guy was emulating on the Moog synthesizer. So very good for that reason. And let's see. This is another Dick Hyman record, Concerto Electro. So this is more electric piano than Moog, I think. But, he's a very good keyboardist. Although I'd say Age of Electronicus is definitely the one to get if you're stuck with only. Although I might call this number 2 for Dick Hyman. So this is Phantom Fingers by Dick Hyman. I think it cost me $5 back in the day. If you can still get it for $5, certainly do so. This one one of the songs on here is absolutely amazing. It's called Phantom Fingers, like the title of the record. And Phantom Fingers goes on for 8 minutes and 50 seconds, and it has a sort of primitive drum machine on it, while Hyman just completely rips on the electronic synthesizer. It's really cool stuff. So, and it has a version of "Put Your Hand in the Hand" in it, because I know there are a bunch of crate diggers who like to collect different versions of "Put Your Hand in the Hand." Oh, and this is the more well-known Dick Hyman record, Moog. This one has a record he had a top 40 hit with called "The Minotaur," which is a really, really good electronic record. So, yeah, definitely top three Dick Hyman. I might even call it number 2, but Age of Electronicus is probably the best. This is Moog. Has the Topless Dancers of Corfu, The Legend of Johnny Pot, The Minotaur, which was his top 40 hit. Just really amazing stuff, at least for his Moog. Oh, but actually, I may need to revise my Dick Hyman ranking. See, this isn't one of his Moog synthesizer records, but it's one. So this guy was back in the late 50s, early 60s. This is an original copy of Moon Gas by Dick Hyman and Mary Mayo. And this is, so Mary Mayo, she was kind of on that Ema Sumac, Lita Anest, Miriam Burton trip, where she was a very, kind of trying to be an out there female vocalist, had a really big range, really pushed that range to its limits. Mary Mayo is trying to sound like some sort of outer space pixie, if that's something that you can imagine. And she's very cooing and seductive in the vocals, but light and airy and ethereal. Like I said, like an outer space pixie. And Dick Hyman has all these great electronic accompaniments. It's kind of early 60s, so it was actually pre-Moog synthesizer, so it's kind of like gimmicky, kind of electronically sound. It's kind of like the late 50s, early 60s kind of moon age, space age futurism before we actually got on the moon. So it was a lot more imaginative because we didn't have the moon to know what it was like. And it is just amazing because it's more imaginative because we had to imagine what it was like to be in space. And so he came up with very imaginative music to match that. And Mary Mayo is on this, and she's an amazing vocalist. And I am lucky to have this. The only reason I have it is because I got it back in the day when it wasn't as expensive. But, if you do see a copy that shows up cheap, like an original copy that shows up cheap, you must get it. You must trample over people to get it. I don't care that it's that good. So this is a Psych record, H.Y. Sledge, bootleg music. And let's see what else we got. Okay, this is so. I think this is where I'm finally in. Yes, I am finally in the I's. So starting with the letter I and only the letter I Hate the Beatles Even More, Volume 2. I like the Beatles. These guys are trying to be punk rock and say they hate the Beatles. But what's interesting is this has some really bizarre Beatles cover versions on it, and so that's why I had to get the record. So I Hate the Beatles Even More, Volume 2. There obviously is a I Hate the Beatles Volume 1, but I haven't tracked down a copy of that. Janice Ian, The Secret Life of J. Eddie Fink. This is supposed to be her psychedelic record. So she was a folkie. This was the one close to being psychedelic or psychedelic adjacent record she did. I think I found this in some guy's basement. Ian and Sylvia, the great folk duo. So this is, 66. Ian and Sylvia, Lovin' Sound. So they're trying to get sound a little bit more hippie-ish. I maybe place it about 1966, maybe 1965. I don't have the exact dates handy. And then, So I talked a bit earlier about a band called the Animated Egg. But the Animated Egg was pretty much a phony group that was based on master tapes that were stolen. And they were pretty much stolen from this major record label called The Id. The Id was a psychedelic group that was, they put a guy named Jerry Cole, who was a really great guitar player, who was one of the Los Angeles Wrecking Crew. So he was so good, he could be a session musician and play anonymously on all these records. But they kind of tried to make a psychedelic group out of him called The Id. But it's actually really weird. And there's one on here called Boil the Kettle Mother, which is absolutely insane garage psych sound. The inner sound of the Id goes on for about 10 minutes. That is like raga, drone, craziness. So this is a relatively early psych record because it's 1966 instead of 1967. But it's really good guitar, and it's connected to the Animated Egg record. And the Idle Race. The Idle Race was a group that had Jeff Lynne in it before the Electric Light Orchestra formed. So this is a very good, if you like your UK pop psych. So this is unfortunately I don't, because I'm in America, I don't always get all the best UK psych because it doesn't show up in garage sales and stuff. But this is one that was sold decently in the United States. and it was on Liberty Records. So this is a U.S. press of the Idol Race, The Birthday Party. So this is a more English take on psychedelia. If you are of a more Anglophile bent and you like Electric Light Orchestra, well, this is what they were doing before becoming an Electric Light Orchestra. So good record. And this is called If You Turn On. So this is a CBS anti-drug broadcast. Very interesting spoken word content. I like to have those anti-drug spoken word records from the 60s. This is a very nice sort of a jazzy prog record by a group called Iliad. It has a very nice cover of Norwegian Wood on it. And let's see, this one, this is just a very weird kind of avant-garde jazz improvisational group called Iltar. Just a bunch of weirdos. There's some sitar on some of the tracks. Mainly just a bunch of avant-garde jazz guys doodling around. Sometimes I'm in the mood for that. So, that's kind of what you're into. I don't know how. So I found this in Idaho, of all places, but it is an amazing electronic experimental record called Images Fantastique. It is on Limelight. So if you're into electronic music of the 1960s, especially stuff that kind of pushes the boundaries experimentally, you will want to get records off of Limelight. Limelight was a jazz and electronics label that was under Mercury Records, but the stuff on Limelight is just amazing. It has the 50-Foot Hose record on it. It has some other, the Tom Dissevelt and Kid Baltan records. So a lot of really interesting, pioneering, experimental electronics guys. Definitely something for you to check out. So anything on the Limelight label, a lot of that stuff is worth checking out. And let's see, Imagination, the World of Inner Space. So this is a record from Scholastic Records. The same people with the junior high school book fairs. And so in the 70s, they often had records that went with film strips, excuse me. I said film trips because the record is actually kind of trippy because it came out in the early 70s, and that's just how weird children's stuff was in the early 70s. So it's a trippy film strip record. Imagination, the World of Inner Space. So, this is a good garagey record. This one didn't cost me too much money. I got it online for like $25. I mean, records of this type could be like in the 3-digit range, 4-digit range. So getting it for $25, I felt like I got it easy. It's a band called The Immigrants. The Immigrants 66 has some nice covers on it. So it's good garagey battle of the band, 1960s battle of the bands kind of music. And folk music in today's church. There's not really anybody credited on the record. The name of it, so I have it filed under I because the title of the record is called Impact, and it's mainly interesting because it kind of has some rock mass or religious rock music, religious rock music on it. So it's very early Christian contemporary music, but the good stuff from the 60s and early 70s, not the stuff they have today. And this is a band. So the name of this band is just called Los In, or The Inn. They are I forget. Are they from Uruguay? They're from some country down in South America, and and this one's called Commotion or Commotion, and it just has some really good Spanish language songs on it. They have some originals on here. They also do a cover version of the Beatles' "Hey Bulldog," from the Yellow Submarine record. That one doesn't get covered as often. This one's in Spanish, so even more cool. But these guys are pretty good. They're those. I like a lot of those Spanish language garage bands because they're usually all pretty tight musicians. This one, very nice soundtrack, In Like Flint. So this was a James Bond spoof from 1967, and the soundtrack In Like Flint. So if you like that Austin Powers sound, this has that, except it was the sound when it was new. So it wasn't just trying to play a joke. It was actually sound that was contemporary at one point. But it's actually still pretty cool when you get to hear it in modern times. So In Like Flint, very nice jazz bond. In Like Flint, a very mod, jazzy James Bond spoof record. And in the beginning, God. So I think this is a Christian record, but it has a bunch of weird spoken word bits and weird electronics on it. Oh, I love these guys. The Incredible Bongo Band. So there's a very famous version of Apache that is associated with this group. That the record is used on a lot of hip hop break records. A lot of break dancers used to dance to the Incredible Bongo Band's version of Apache. So this is very good. It also has some really good. So there's a cover version of a song called "Let There Be Drums" that is also very good, and "Inagata de Vida." The Incredible Bongo Band's version of "Inagata de Vida," I think, was sampled by Nas on one of his records. So this is good. This has a lot of stuff that's been sampled very heavily, and it's bongo rock. It's like got mad percussion beats on this, and it rocks. Very rocking guitars, but like mad beats, mad percussive beats on it. And Nick Ingman, the Terminator. So this is kind of a UK lounge mod record. And let's see what else have we got. Oh, so this is another one of those Lennon-McCartney country style. So there's the Charles River Valley Boys, Beatle country, and this one's Lennon-McCartney country style by a guy named Jerry Inman. They're both good. There actually are a bunch of Beatles songs from the 1965, 1966 era that actually lend themselves quite well to a country and western arrangement. So some of these records are definitely better than you'd expect. Okay, all right. Now this is a great soft pop. What? The Inner Dialogue. Oh, I absolutely love these guys. The Inner Dialogue. They were a soft sunshine pop psych group. They are very close to the level of the Free Design for me. Unfortunately, they only made 2 albums, so maybe if they made more albums, I would like them as much as the Free Design. But they're up there. This is really good. Like if you want, sunshine pop psych that is just like audio Prozac and just immediately puts you in a better mood. This is the kind of stuff. This is the stuff. And This one I found, this was a very fortuitous flea market find, In Search Of. So In Search Of was a sort of weird proto-reality show, TV show, that was hosted by Leonard Nimoy, and it would focus on sort of like the crazy UFOs and psychic phenomena that a lot of those really cheesy History Channel shows do today. And so this one had so let me read some of the titles. Time Traveler, A Taste of Ghosts, Phenomena Theme, An Atlantean Dream, an Atlantean meaning from Atlantis, The Rise and Fall of Vlad Dracula, Nazca Lines, Easter Island Suite. So like a lot of weird, scary. You know, that's kind of the musical vibe that they're kind of going for. Now, a very nice jazzy psych band with the letter I is the Insect Trust. These were kind of like bohemian folks from New York. I think they had a female lead singer. I like the blend of male and female voices on a lot of psychedelic stuff from the 60s. There's one cover version of a song by Moondog, the beatnik jazz street musician of the 1950s. One of the songs is taken from lyrics to a song that wasn't originally a song, but was actually lyrics that Thomas Pynchon wrote in one of his books, and they turned it into a song. And so there's some very interesting choices for songs, and the stuff they write themselves is very good. Definitely very jazz tinged psychedelia, but not. It was too early to be kind of that wanky sort of 70s jazz fusion. This was definitely there were some pretty bohemian dudes who could pass themselves off as a rock psychedelic band, but were definitely heavily into the jazz stuff, and the music reflects that tinge. And so, so this is an electronic experimental record. The inside of the outside, or the outside of the inside. Who are they? Where do they come from? Why are they here? So lots and lots of experimental electronics on this one. And what else? Are we still in the eyes? Yes, we're still in the eyes. So here's the International Elvis Impersonators Contest. So if you want to listen to a bunch of Elvis impersonators, they're all on this record from Rhino Records. This is the International Submarine Band. So this band was the band that Graham Parsons, the famous country rock guy, was in before he went solo. And so the International Submarine Band is probably one of the first country rock groups that ever existed, even before the Byrds were dabbling in country rock music. So this is one of the first country rock records that have ever been made. And then well, yeah, the Peter Ivers Band. So this is a weird dude. The Night of the Blue Communion, Peter Ivers Band. Peter Ivers was he later became a punk rock new wave guy. He hosted a show called New Wave Theater in Los Angeles on public access, and he was later killed mysteriously. So not much is known exactly about what happened to the guy, but very weird record. And this is one of those Jefferson Airplane-ish records I like. Ivory, a woman and two dudes on the front cover. They all have equally long hair. I guess mine is a promo copy, but a very nice record to have. So that is the last of my records in the eyes. So we got through the H's and the I's. And so, beginning of the Jays, Jackie and Roy. So this is their attempt to be hip and psychedelic, and the record is called Grass, because of course it is. And it has a cover version of Lady Madonna on it. There's a really good, it's not on this record, but there's a really good, if I'm right, there's still a very good clip of them on YouTube where they do a version of the Beatles' The Word, and they're singing with all these amazing jazz chords that they do vocally. And so they were really tight jazz singers, but they were trying to get hip to the 60s, and I do kind of like that. So even if you're not totally hip, I like performers, older performers who have the openness to try to embrace new sounds. Now this is Jack Pine Savage. It's a record called Together. Jack Pine Savage wasn't actually a real group. It's actually Bruce Hock. Bruce Hock, the guy who made all those electronic children's music records that I've raved about before. So this is similarly good. So this is Jack Pine Savage Together, and it's really good. And let's see. I think this is a Jackson Memorial High School. So this is a high school band record that I think I wanted to track down because it has some interesting Beatles covers on it. And so this one, I'm gonna have to revisit this one, but this one has some, like, it's got beats on it, it's got jazz on it, it's got electronics on it. Melvin Jackson, Funky Skull. So this is on the Limelight LP. So Limelight was both a jazz, like a far out jazz record, and it later became a record that tried to market experimental electronic music to hippies at the same time. So this guy, who looks a little bit like Isaac Hayes, says, jazz, far out jazz, or electronic music. Hey, why don't I do both? I'll do both. I'll be far out jazz and far out electronic music, and I'll be funky at the same time. And so I need to listen to this again because I may have forgotten how good this is, but it's good stuff. And now, one person I've actually seen in concert, the Queen of Rockabilly, Wanda Jackson. So this is a later compilation of Wanda Jackson's more rock-oriented or rockabilly-oriented music. But Wanda Jackson, just pick up. Like, if you can find 50s or early 60s, like LPs or 45 Inspire, do it, because she rocks. I think she did, there's a more recent record she did that was produced by Jack White. Now, this is one I am very privileged to have, although the sleeve is a bit ratty. There's a Party Going On, Wanda Jackson. Oh, my God. She is the queen of rockabilly. You just gotta listen to this woman. She is just amazing. So, Wanda Jackson. Miss Jackson, you are for real. You are for real. And here, this is Henry Jacobs. Henry Jacobs was a very bohemian guy from the beatnik period. He operated out of San Francisco, out of Northern California, and he was actually kind of a pioneer in doing a lot of sound collages. So he was doing a lot of electronic and sound collage-y kind of things. He's cool because he's beatnik. He's very beatnik, and he takes a very non-academic approach to his electronic sound collage experiments. And often a lot of his stuff, there's a lot of humor in it, which you don't always see with a lot of this electronic experimental stuff. So this is very good. So this was radio program #1 audio collage. So this is Henry Jacobs, and it was based on a program that he did over the radio in the 1950s, and some of this stuff he collected from all the shenanigans he pulled on the radio. And here is one of the great psychedelic lounge married couple records. Mosaic, Pieces of Stone, Jade, Stone, and Love. How can you not? How can you not love this cover? Oh my God. Look at this couple. Look at this couple. The music is to match the cover. It is just amazing. And Jade, Stone, and Love. This is a Indian guy. He was an actor out of the UK. Saeed Jaffrey. I think he's in the movie My Beautiful Laundrette. I think he's the dad or the uncle of the guy who's the Indian guy who's like screwing Daniel Day-Lewis in My Beautiful Laundrette. But he's basically an Indian-born or Indian ethnicity actor from the UK of long standing, and this is a record he did. It's kind of a recitations from the Kama Sutra. So, The Art of Love by Saeed Jaffrey. And this is Jane, and the title is insane. It's called Prophecy Fulfilled. So this is a sunshine, I call this sunshine pop for stalkers. It is a sunshine pop record, but there's just a slightly creepy undertone to it. And all of the songs refer to a she or a her, and you think that maybe, just in the back of your mind, that all of the songs may be about the same woman that one of the guys in the band must be obsessed with. And if I actually saw these guys and asked what happened to the woman, I don't know what answer I'm going to get. Like, the answer might be, oh, I married her, or, oh, she's buried under my floorboards. So, anyway, very interesting kind of sunshine pop record, because it's a privately pressed sunshine pop record, and just look at how intense and pretentious these guys look on the front cover. I mean, you can appreciate it. You can appreciate it non-ironically as music. It is good sunshine pop, but there's a dark undercurrent to it. It may not have been what the musicians intended, but it's there when you hear it, and very, very interesting record in that regard. So this is the name of the group is JAIM, Jaim, and the record is Prophecy Fulfilled. But you'll just have to recognize it by the cover. The cover is crazy. And let's see, what else do we have? This is Jalaluddin. This is a belly dance record here. Oh, this is very nice. Lennon and McCartney reggae style, the Jamestown Sheiks. So this is late 60s UK reggae. So the UK was way ahead of the curve into reggae before the United States was, and this is an album in that laid-back UK 60s reggae style, but doing Lennon McCartney Beatles tunes, and I really like this record. I'd like it even if it wasn't a bunch of Beatles tunes, but it is, and so I really like it. Jan and Lorraine, Gypsy People. So this is a good two women who are kind of doing a folk psych record. There's some really good songs on this. Break Out the Wine, and let's see, Snow Roses, Break Out the Wine. Some really good folk psych songs. Lots of strumming guitars, and I can't remember if there's auto harp on this record, but two cool hippie chicks with voices that really blend well together. And what else do we have here? Oh, here's a very good psychedelic record. I think this was on Enterprise Records, which was a Southern label associated with Stax and the Stax soul music, but it is more of it's kind of a Jefferson Airplane-ish psychedelic band with male and female vocals and some soul tinges to it because it came from the South. There's a guy picking his nose on the back cover, whether that's a highlight or not, it's free country. And let's see. This is Januar. Januar is a Bollywood film, and the reason I like this is because it has a Hindi version of I Want to Hold Your Hand that was done in the style of a number from a Bollywood musical. So it's good stuff. Januar, very nice Bollywood soundtrack to have. And if you can see clips, it's called it's a Hindi version of it's called Dekho Abto. So it's DEKHO, new word AB, new word TO. Dekho Abto, and it's basically a Bollywood number that is a version of the Beatles' I Want to Hold Your Hand. So if you can look that up and find it on YouTube, it is amazing to see the movie portion, the visuals that go with the song, but the song is great even without the visuals. Januar, a great Bollywood soundtrack. And let's see what we have here. I think that this is kind of a, I don't know, lesbian psych experimental music. I think her name is Jasmine. That's why it's under J. This came out of the San Francisco Bay Area, which is the reason why I have it. So it's kind of obscure. Very nice psychedelic into prog rock record. Jasper Wrath. So very, very nice UK prog record. And the Abner Jay. So this is a sort of a one-man band blues guy who has just some really crazy raw blues stuff that he writes himself. Abner Jay. The backbone of America is a mule and cotton. And so he has some very interesting titles for his songs, and just he'll play on a guitar but while he's playing the guitar, he'll work the drum with his feet, and he's just crazy, man. Jazz Class, Statler Records. So I have a bunch of records in this Jazz Class series. The reason I got them is they have a garage rock group called The Night Shift on the back cover. And so these are records made for a dance class, but instrumentally, it was done by a kind of beat psychedelic garage rock band out of upstate New York, I think. So that was the only gig they had for being on an LP. Jazz Heat Bongo Beat on the budget label Crown Records. So definitely your Latin flavored exotica. And nice 1970s hard rock, 1970 or 71, I think. J.D. Blackfoot, The Ultimate Prophecy. So really, really good, like kind of smoke some weed and play some guitar, hard rock. And yes, the first Jefferson Airplane album. I've long been a fan of Jefferson Airplane, and here is the more well-known second album by Jefferson Airplane, Surrealistic Pillow. What is interesting about this copy, well, aside from it being in the shrink and being very, very clean, it is a mono copy. Mono copies are much harder to find of this record because they were mostly going from mono to stereo. But the mono version, I think the mono version of Surrealistic Pillow actually sounds better than the standard stereo version is. There are some acoustic tracks on this record where in the mono mix you can actually almost hear Jorma Kaukonen like pulling his fingers off the guitar strings. It is just a very great sound in mono. And Herb Jeffries, the Singing Prophet. So this is a guy associated with Eden Abez, one of the original Nature Boys from the 1950s. And Herb Jeffries was an African-American singer who was associated with him. And so he sang some stuff that was also kind of on the same like beatnik mystical level that Eden Abez was on. And this one takes me back to my college days. So this is Jello Biafra's spoken word album, No More Cocoons. This is around the time when he's like attacking the PMRC and all of those groups that were trying to censor records. So it's a very entertaining spoken word album. It's Jello Biafra of Dead Kennedys fame doing a spoken word record. And then another great psychedelic album on mainstream records, the Jelly Bean Bandits. This is just amazing. I love the cover where they look like a bunch of banditos wearing sombreros, and they have even a bottle of tequila, and there's some really great songs on here like Generation and Plastic Soldiers. Plastic Soldiers is kind of an anti-war song, and there's like a line in one of these songs, what remains of society is manure. Like, these guys, they were kind of pushing the envelope, so they were a good group. They were kind of Rolling Stones-ish, garage psych, good guys. And let's see. Florence Foster Jenkins. So there were two movies. There was a French movie made based on her life, and there's also the more well-known U.S. version of Florence Foster Jenkins' life that had Meryl Streep playing the role. This was the kind of crazy rich lady who she couldn't sing, but basically she would use her money to basically do all these premieres where she could do her opera singing, and she's a very bad opera singer, and so this is kind of a novelty record on that level. And on this one, she's not the only one singing. There's a guy who's a really bad opera singer who kind of sings like Elmer Fudd, who's on side two. It's a really weird record, but it was on RCA, and I think it actually sold a bunch of copies. You'd be surprised, but yeah, it's a novelty record that is one of the less hard to find novelty records. And Jeremy and the Satyrs. Oh yeah, so I think this is a sealed one that I used to have it, and I listened to it, and then I think I sold it. Then I ended up buying the sealed copy. I haven't unsealed this one, but it's really good jazzy psychedelic rock. In fact, it's kind of more on the jazzy tip because the Jeremy is a guy named Jeremy Steig, and he was the son of William Steig, the children's book author and illustrator who created Shrek. And so Jeremy Steig was his son. Unfortunately, Jeremy Steig died and predeceased his father. I believe William Steig is still alive. But Jeremy Steig, and he played flute. He played jazz flute in kind of this psychedelic rock jazz band. And it's actually pretty good. It's really good. And I also have some solo records from him, and so you'll see some more Jeremy Steig stuff. And Doug Jernigan, Uptown to Country. I like the cover with two women in bikinis surrounding a steel guitar. Diggin' Doug Jernigan, Uptown to Country. It also has, let's see, does it have? It does not have any Beatles covers, but it's actually it's a good steel guitar record. It's a good steel guitar record. So it's a steel guitar record that survives by its own merits and does not require a Beatles cover in order to be cool. And let's see. So this is a really crazy hippie attempt at beatnik poetry, Duck number 1. That's by two guys named Jerry and Mike. So it's filed under J. And oh yeah. So these are guys I still love these guys. The Jesus and Mary Chain, Darklands and Psycho Candy, those are their first two albums. Psycho Candy is the best, their debut and the best. But Darklands is also pretty killer too. So I was heavily into the Jesus and Mary Chain in high school. They had a lot of feedback with their guitars, so maybe that's how I got into psychedelic music with a lot of distortion in it. And so, but anyway, these guys, alternative rock from the 1980s, or what they used to call college rock back then. But they're cool dudes, very cool dudes. And the Jesus and Mary Chain, and from the Jesus and Mary Chain, a much more reverent group, although they are in the cover is in complete tie-dye day glow, and the letters is kind of orange on black background, but it's Thief in the Night, the Jesus Generation. So this is a Christian rock group. What is very interesting about this Christian rock group is that they do a bunch of Beatles songs like Help and Yesterday, but they redo them with completely different Christian lyrics that they've written. And so this is a very unusual Christian rock group. And some very unusual Beatles covers with the lyrics completely rewritten. And this is a very solid record. The Jetliners, so I believe they are from Sri Lanka. But they primarily performed in India, and they were kind of a mod psych band for they weren't underground hippies, but they played the kind of mod 1966 era music, stuff that would be played in a go-go discotheque, and it's good music. I mean, it's good. It's not very pretentious. It's just good go-go dance music played by a bunch of Sri Lankan folks who often toured in India. So it's called the Jetliners. And let's see. Okay, so here is a Jiggers. Jiggers. This is Jiggers Johnson. Jiggers is a completely fictional ventriloquist dummy. This is another Christian ventriloquist record called Fun and Inspiration, and it's got so many puppets. It's insane. And of course, I mean, the whole concept of ventriloquist dummies on record is kind of insane, but in execution, these records are usually more insane. Oh, and here's another Jiggers record, Jiggers Story Time. And here, the ventriloquist dummy is on the back of a horse. So the cover concept is equally insane. But yes, you got to have your Christian ventriloquist records because pretty much everything in the genre is just completely wacky. And so I am at the end of the box, and it is 2 albums by the very lovely folk rock group Jim and Jean. So Jim and Jean were a folk duo of the mid-60s.